Hello! Okay, so this is going to be, I'm going to try and do this part in one video because I don't think I have enough to talk about to split it into two, but we'll see how that goes. This is one of those slightly weirder parts of the book where I don't know how much I have to say about the characters because it feels like all of the characters' individual arcs are just carrying on the way they have been. Like, it's just a continuation of what's already been happening, and it's not a criticism, it just means I don't have that much new to talk about. Shallan and Kaladin are both still dealing with their issues from last time. I would say that the big breakthrough here is Shallan and Adolin confiding their secrets in each other. Shallan sharing her multiple personality issue, and the fact that she buries her memories, and Adolin sharing the fact that he killed Thaddeus, which is a bit more serious of a thing to share. I'm gonna be honest. Shallan needs to step it up and maybe tell him about her parents. But other than that, there's not much to talk about that whole cast of characters. Really, the big stuff I want to talk about here is everything that happens in Dalinar's side of the story, because this is finally the part of the book where Dalinar is very much the most interesting character. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the world building of Shadesmar and why I absolutely adore it. And I want to talk about Azure, because I was right. It's not explicitly confirmed, but it's confirmed at this point. So let's start with Azure, actually, because I have some interesting thoughts on that. So, Azure is Vivenna. Uh, she hasn't said so, but it's really clear. It's really obvious that she's Vivenna at this point. Which means that Zahel is Vasher. And it's implied, in fact, it's outright stated, I believe, that Vivenna is here to chase Vasher, to hunt Vasher, and that Vasher is the one who brought Nightblood to Roshar. That seems odd. That seems strange. Clearly some stuff happened with these characters between Warbreaker and where we are now that put them in a very different place in terms of their relationship to each other and in terms of their character motivations than the last time I saw them. So I'm really looking forward to learning more about them, but I don't think I will in this book, because Azure has departed from our little crew here. And something tells me she won't be back for the climax, just because I'm pretty sure the climax is going to focus very, very tightly on what's going on with Dalinar right now. Or rather, what's going on in general, like, in Roshar, not the stuff in Shadesmar. Although I'm guessing that this book will also end with Kaladin, Adolin, and Shallan making it back. I assume. It would be weird if they just stayed in Shadesmar. Although that would certainly be an interesting choice, I suppose. So yeah, as for Azure, I don't know what her motives are. I mean, she's told us what her motives are. I don't know why those are her motives, rather. I don't know why she's hunting Vasher. I don't know why Vasher did what he did, which is apparently just bring Nightblood here. Yeah. I do like the reveal. That was a really cool reveal for me, a realization that because Vasher, as Zahel, has basically been training Adolin and Kaladin, they, much to Vivenna's complete bafflement, use Nolthian warm-up exercises. And they don't even know that there's anything weird about that. Like, they're like, oh yeah, these are just regular warm-up exercises. No, they're from a different planet. So yeah, I really like that detail. Um, Anyway, let's talk about the world building of Shadesmar. So Shadesmar is the way Shadesmar is written in this book makes it to me extremely clear that Brandon Sanderson has a history with Dungeons and Dragons. Because the specific way that Shadesmar is done here, essentially uh, being this super high fantasy alternate plane of existence, but rather than being totally alien and totally devoid of life, there's just a bunch of people from all these other worlds who just live there. Like, they just regularly move through Shadesmar. Some of them live there permanently. There's whole civilizations of sapient beings who have their own cultures living full time within Shadesmar. And while the place is utterly alien, the way life works there really isn't. Like, people, like, there are banks, there are docks, there are traders, there are merchants, there's fairly normal human-like forms of civilization and culture within Shadesmar, uh, which you would not expect, really. And I really like that because it reminds me of, like I said, the way Dungeons and Dragons handles um, interplanar travel, uh, and sort of the way that there tend to be these whole civilizations and cultures that exist in these interplanar spaces, and there are individuals who are totally um, like who are totally part of this interplanar traveling culture, uh, whereas most quote unquote ordinary people in the quote unquote normal world don't even know any of this stuff exists, probably. So yeah, that's what that reminded me of, really, quite a lot, and I enjoyed it a lot. I enjoyed the world building of the different types of spren. Um, the uh, the Reachers are cool. The Honor Spren are really interesting. It's really interesting learning that Syl is basically a wanted fugitive. I wasn't expecting that. Uh, I would have assumed that the Stormfather would have maybe bothered to inform the honor spren about his recent change of heart. I mean, it's been like at least several months since he bonded Dalinar, so I'm not. I feel like this one's on him. Like, the trouble they had here is entirely on the Stormfather. Um, he definitely should have sent out a memo at some point. Um, I also really like how different Spren within Shadesmar have a very different attitude towards the idea of the return of the Knights Radiant. Um, there are Spren who are super excited about it and who are like, finally, we're saved, everything is gonna be good now. And then there are others who are like, this is the worst thing that's ever happened. um, and I don't uh and we don't really get an indication of like which side is more numerous, I guess. Like what the general public of Shadesmar feels. I'm guessing it probably depends on which type of spren they are. Um yeah, so what else is there that happens in the Shadesmar sections that I find interesting? I find it I find the reveal really interesting that a lot of seemingly regular normal animals on Roshar only exist thanks to magical aid from Spren. Like the fact that great shells, for example, are only really able to exist because they defy gravity through the aid of the weird Spren that help sky eels fly. That's a cool little detail. Um, the fact that the quote unquote dead spren of Shardblades still exist within Shadesmar and still just like walk around and like they're just around is supremely creepy, like exceptionally so. Um, Especially the part about the eyes being scratched out. Um, I okay. I have a feeling that there is going to eventually be some kind of way to heal those spren. I have a feeling that Adolin is going to somehow manage to heal the spren of his sword, and then maybe bond her. I'm not sure I want that to happen because I feel like having Adolin as a regular human, like a non-Surge Binder, is kind of vital because we have a very Surge Binder heavy cast. But this is a thing I also talked about in Mistborn, which is that um, even though people with magical abilities tend to be very rare in these settings, our main cast is like entirely people who have the magical ability, like who have whatever that setting's form of investiture is. Um, and I feel like maybe having a few more non-magical, non-invested main characters would be more interesting, I guess. Um, anyway, uh, that I'm getting off topic here. Uh, I don't think there's anything much else that happens in Shadesmar that I find super interesting, other than the Oracle. I don't know if what Kaladin saw at the Oracle can be trusted. It kind of seems like it can, because it does appear that shit's gonna go down in Thalen City, which is where his vision pointed him. But I'm not sure if it can be trusted, just because so far there has been no indication that prophecy within the Cosmere is necessarily possible, other than maybe the Hero of Ages. There's some vagueness about whether the Hero of Ages was a genuine prophecy in Mistborn Era 1. But other than that, I feel like straight up, like full on visions of the future might not be a thing. But maybe they are. I don't know. It's like it's possible this is a genuine vision. It's also possible that it's something sent by Odium. Uh, we do also, speaking of prophecy, actually, we do also get Kaladin finding one of the paintings from the same artist whose paintings featured so prominently in Warbringer, the painting that Lightsong obsessed over for quite a while, was actually from the same artist. But yeah, that's I think everything about the Shadesmar sections here for now. Before I move on to Dalinar and everything that's going on with Dalinar, I want to briefly talk about Seth. So, Seth is now apparently he wants to basically purge Shinovar, which okay, I feel like it's understandable given his situation. It's understandable that he would be mad at his people, but it's also very misplaced. I feel like, if anything, he should be making it his mission to kill Teravangian. Uh, but I also understand why he's not. I understand why he really blames primarily the Shin for what happened to him and what he's been forced to do. Um, he's also training as a Skybreaker and apparently getting pretty close to like swearing the first proper oath of a Skybreaker. But the last time we saw him here, Neo was about to tell him the truth. The truth that we now also know, which we learn later on in the book, which is that which is the truth that I suspected, which is that Parshmen predate humanity on this world and that humans are the invaders. And Nail is acting like telling Seth this should massively influence his decision of what oath to swear. And my current theory is that Nail has decided that they should side with the Parshmen, that they should swear to uphold the laws of the Singers, not the laws of humanity. That's my current working theory. We'll see in part 5 whether I'm right. I'm sure we'll get the conclusion of that scene in part 5, or at least the aftermath of it. I don't know if Seth is going to agree with that. I don't know if Seth is going to swear an oath like that, but I'm pretty sure Nail will. Or at least Nail will, like, change his oaths, essentially, like, recontextualize them to be that way. As will a lot of the other Skybreakers, I'm sure, once he tells them. Which will be interesting. It's going to mean that there's going to be like a whole swath of human surge binders on the side of on the side of the Singers. It's also interesting that we learn here that Nail is not just a herald. He is also himself an actual full Knight Radiant. Which it never really occurred to me that those would be different things and that one person could be both, but yeah, that makes sense. It makes sense that in addition to having power through his honor blade, he could also just swear oaths on the side. And he says that he is the only herald to have done this. I don't know if that's true. We'll see going forward. What I'm wondering is it possible for a herald to become a Knight Radiant of a completely different type? I imagine it is, because it's definitely possible for a Knight Radiant to pick up a different herald's honor blade and get their powers, because Dalinar was talking about using Jezrien's honor blade to become a Windrunner, and he is currently a bondsmith. So I'm sure that's possible. I'm just wondering if it's also possible for a herald. Like, could, just random thought, could Nail become a Windrunner or something? I don't know. It's interesting to contemplate. Anyway, moving on from that, from the topic of Seth and Nail, let's finally talk about Dalinar. So there's a couple of things that happen here. First, let's talk about the revelation of Dalinar's backstory. I was not aware that Dalinar's visit to the Night Watcher happened after Gavilar's death. I had been under the impression that Dalinar, the current day Dalinar, had visited the Night Watcher, like, in his youth, like 10 or 15 years before the story began. But it's now clear that the visit to the Night Watcher was actually shockingly recent. In fact, after what was technically the start of the Way of Kings. After Gavilar's assassination. Which I did not see coming. But it makes sense, because it has been implied by various characters that the big shift in Dalinar's behavior came after Gavilar's death. So it makes sense that that is actually caused by his visit to the Night Watcher. Did I say Nightbringer at some point? If I did, I meant Night Watcher. We also get official confirmation from the Stormfather, by the way. This is unrelated, but we get official confirmation from the Stormfather that the Night Watcher is in fact one of the other bondsmiths, Bren, which is interesting. Anyway, so I really like the depiction of Dalinar's sort of dark descent into despair and alcoholism. It's fairly well done. It's not too gratuitous. We don't spend too much time on it, just enough to sort of show us how low he had fallen. He does encounter a homeless guy who spouts some weird stuff about the Unmade at him. I don't know what that was about. I wonder if that'll come up again, or if that was just meant to be like a creepy, like, ooh, the Unmade are influencing people already, ooh, moment. We'll see if that particular interaction becomes important. I have the whole interaction copied into my notes, just in case. So that's about the extent of the backstory we get for Dalinar in this section. It's not a lot. The more interesting stuff with Dalinar happens in the present day, actually. So we have a couple of major events happening with Dalinar in the major day, in the current day, the modern timeline of Stormlight. The first one is that he has a massive relapse in his alcoholism, triggered, funnily enough, not directly by him getting his memories back the way I had suspected would happen. Like I suspect, like, if I were to, I mean, I didn't suspect. I didn't really think about the whole alcoholism thing. I forgot that he used to be an alcoholic, honestly, until this section. But if you had told me that Dalinar would like sink back into despair, during this book, I would have assumed that the big thing that would trigger it would be remembering Evie's death. But he actually managed to fight through that. The thing that triggered it, interestingly enough, was feeling the thrill again, which he feels when he visits Yakeved, which is under the influence of Nergaul. That makes a ton of sense, because of course Dalinar's whole thing is guilt over the stuff he's done, and a lot of the stuff he's done was in large part motivated by the thrill. So feeling the thrill again is not just a reminder of everything terrible that he's done, which he now remembers. It's also a feeling that he might do it all again. It's a feeling that it makes him feel that he hasn't overcome the monstrous person that he used to be. Of course, it's not his fault. He's feeling the thrill for reasons outside of his control, and no amount of becoming a better person would prevent that. But that's not how it feels to him in the moment. And this makes me wonder. This was clearly planned by Teravangian. The question now is, which part was directly executed by Teravangian? The return of Dalinar's memories? I don't know. I'm still not sure. I can't say for sure. However, did Teravangian bring Dalinar to Yakeved specifically to expose him to Nergaul? Plausible. We know that Teravangian has been tracking Nergaul's movement across Roshar. More interestingly, does Teravangian have some means of controlling Nergaul? Did Teravangian directly make Nergaul target Dalinar with the thrill during his visit to Yakeved? Because if so, that implies that Teravangian has some powers we're not aware of, if he's able to actually control one of the Unmade. Anyway, this actually fails. Dalinar does sink back into alcoholism, but he comes right back out. He recovers. And this is where I want to talk about the other major thing that Dalinar does here, which I completely forgot to talk about right now. I should have talked about this before talking about Teravangian's plot, which is that Dalinar actually gets into contact with Venli and pushes Venli pretty significantly, I think, towards what is a pretty inevitable arc at this point. I was not expecting that. I was not expecting that direct contact, and he like, he's concerned that he's turned Venli away forever by exposing her to odium, but in truth, what he's done is he's proven to Venli that he is willing to protect her from odium, because he sacrificed himself. He threw himself at odium and allowed himself to be tormented by odium in um, in order to prevent odium from seeing Venli. So I'm thinking that Venli might be fairly impressed by Dalinar's behavior here. Anyway, all of this brings us to the big thing that happens at the end here, which is Teravangian's big, massive gambit. The simultaneous reveal of the fact that Dalinar has that Alhokar named Dalinar High King, which makes perfect sense that all of the other leaders would be upset about that. Teravangian also reveals, although of course it's not, no one knows that it's Teravangian except the reader. Teravangian also reveals the full history of the humans' arrival on Roshar, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. That's the big final chunk of this video. Is going to be about that. And the third thing he reveals is the 2 conversations with odium that Dalinar has had. Now, how Teravangian has access to those, I'm not sure. I'm very confused by that. I'm sure we'll learn that he has some kind of secret agent in Dalinar's posse, but for now it's super weird to me that he even had that. Like, the High King thing makes sense, because Alhokar is probably very bad at keeping secrets, but the 2 visions with odium thing is weird. Specifically the fact that he apparently knew the exact contents of the visions in order to share them. That's odd. Anyway, let's talk about the implications of the reveal of the origins of humanity. So, humanity destroyed its original world, supposedly with surge binding. I'm not 100% sure if that makes sense to me, but I guess there's stuff we still don't know about surge binding, so I'm sure it's possible to destroy a world with it. And then humanity was welcomed by the Singers. And humanity are the actual original Voidbringers, which recontextualizes one of the original listener songs that we had as an epigraph at one point in the second book. There was a listener song which talked about the arrival of the Voidbringers, which I at the time interpreted to mean that the Voidbringers were being referred to there are the Spren of Odium. But no, the Voidbringers are actually humans. And humans brought Odium. Odium was the humans' god, which makes sense. I mean, we knew Odium isn't native to Roshar because that's how the shards of Adonalsium work, and that's what he is. But it's interesting that the humans on Roshar weren't created by the shards the way that they were on something like Scadrial. Instead, they traveled here, presumably through Shadesmar. And they were essentially refugees. And the Singers took them in, and the humans betrayed them and conquered the world and slaughtered them, as humans are wont to do. So this is like a weird... It's like this interesting mix. Like, there's a lot going on here in terms of political analysis, because you could read the humans here as, like, representing colonialism and being like the foreign invaders who colonize the peaceful indigenous people of Roshar. You could also read it as like a weird right-wing cautionary tale about taking in refugees. I don't think that's where we're going with this, frankly, just because that doesn't seem like something Brandon would do. I'm just saying, like, I can definitely see how it could be interpreted that way. And you could also see it as being about global warming, because apparently the humans destroyed the environment of their original world, and the singers were afraid that the humans would do that to this world as well. So there's a lot going on here, but I can't really talk too much about it yet, because we just learned the basic facts. Like, we still don't know where Sanderson is going with that particular story. What I am confused by, however, is the reactions from a lot of the characters. I am surprised by how many characters. Like, on the one hand, I'm surprised by how many characters just kind of accepted this. Like, people weren't like no one is having a existential crisis about this. No one is freaking out about this revelation. No one is apparently even questioning it. No one is doubting the veracity of this really extreme claim that humans aren't native to Roshar. Like, if a bunch of scientists in the real world found evidence, like conclusive evidence, more conclusive than this, that humans are aliens, I feel like most of humanity would just reject that, even with hard evidence. But everyone who heard it here was just like, oh, well, I guess we just have to accept this as fact at face value, which feels a bit weird to me. The other thing that feels weird to me is that everyone seems to not everyone, like some people, like Fen, don't care, but most people, certainly a lot of our main characters, seem to immediately view this as like morally condemning their fight against the singers right now, which this if this story is true, it certainly does somewhat explain and justify the actions of the singers, but it doesn't change the fact that in the current moment, with the currently living generations of singers and humans, the singers are the current aggressors. Like, they do have a moral high ground because they were also enslaved, but like, who was here first doesn't really play that huge a role in my eyes in the morality of this situation. Like, the reason that I find the fight against the singers dubious ethically is because of what the lives of the Parshmen were like now in modern day Roshar. I don't really care who was here first, especially not if this was 10,000 years ago or whatever. And I just find it weird that everyone just kind of seems to, well, not everyone. A lot of people seem to be affected by this. And the third thing I'm surprised by is that everyone just believes that surge binding is dangerous based on this one document. Like, supposedly this is the revelation that made the Knights Radiants abandon their oaths because they were afraid they would destroy Roshar. And like, why? This text says, oh, the Knights Radiant destroyed another planet once with surge binding. To which my question is, okay, how? What exactly did they do? Like, why would you assume that the current Knights Radiant are just going to do the same thing? Based on what? Like, horrible things have historically been done with guns, but not a lot of people have the opinion that as a result that as a result we shouldn't be using guns. I have that opinion personally, but a lot of people don't. And I feel like it's somewhat unrealistic that so many people are immediately like, oh, clearly the Knights Radiant are dangerous. Now, the Recreance is explained a bit by the Stormfather, because the Stormfather says that honor heavily exacerbated that situation. Like, thousands of years ago, honor was not doing well, and he kind of undermined the faith of the Knights Radiant in the righteousness of their own cause. So that I get. I'm super confused about why everyone reacts to the revelation that Odium, their primary enemy, told them that the Knights Radiant are dangerous. Like, yeah, of course he'd say that. It's in his interest for you to not use the Knights Radiant. Use your brains, guys. Of course he'd say that. Now, I'm not saying that the Knights Radiant aren't dangerous. In fact, I'm sure they are. I'm sure that this is a genuine thing that happened. They really did destroy their previous world. I'm just saying, a lot of people's gut reaction to that seems to be, oh, well, clearly we shouldn't have Knights Radiant then. And while I'm not saying that's a wrong reaction, it might be the right reaction. I'm not sure yet. We'll see. We need more data, really. But it is, in my opinion, a somewhat unrealistic reaction. I'm a bit confused about why people are so ready to react that way. I mean, I guess there's like thousands of years of anti-radiant propaganda in place that this, like, thanks to the recreants that they're responding to. I don't know. I'm still not sure how I feel about this. I'm not sure if I feel like this is unrealistic. The more I think about it, the more I'm torn. Like, I keep thinking of reasons why it might be unrealistic and then reasons why it might be realistic. So, I'm going to suspend my disbelief for now and see where we go with this. Um, so, I did have some slight criticisms there at the end of the way that people responded to the revelation, but overall, I am really happy with this section of the book. I am looking forward to the ending, although I'm a bit worried about how this is all going to be wrapped up, because I feel like there is a very small part of the book left, and a lot of stuff needs to happen in it. I'm kind of wondering if this book is going to end up on a cliffhanger instead of actually having a proper climax that resolves itself. Um, I don't think so, because no Sanderson book has done that so far, but you never know. Um, anyway, I'm going to go and start reading the final part of Oathbringer now. See you next week. Bye!